Good afternoon, folks. My name is Scott Lee, and I am alcoholic. And I am a very, very grateful guy. I am blessed beyond my ability to receive, and I owe a debt I can't repay. It's why I'm here. Wow, good. Good. There's some good stuff in here, but the really good stuff's in here, and we're in here. That's so good. I like to open anything I do with a quote from Lois Wilson. She was asked one time what she did in a moment of silence. She said, I invite God to the meeting. It's not that I don't believe God's here. I do believe that. But something special happens for me when I stop and honor that presence. So in a few moments, I'm going to ask you to do that. But there may be somebody here. Anybody here sober less than a year? Under a year? Hands? Outstanding. Thank you. I'm so pleased that you're here. If you don't have a God, if you got here like I did, terrified that there might be one, let me recommend you borrow mine. I recommend it very highly. It's got a great sense of humor. And been keeping me sober since 28 June 1984. I've got 40 years. That's a long time for a guy that only agreed to 28 days. So something is working. So if you don't have a God, borrow mine. Address him as a God of Scott's limited understanding. Get you off on the right foot. And then we're going to do something unusual. We're going to slowly, and I say again slowly, there may be Yankees here. I don't know. I'm from Tennessee. And I love the Yankees, but I can't pray as fast as they do. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly whisper the Serenity Prayer. Let's first invite God to the meeting, and then we will slowly whisper the Serenity Prayer. Let's have a few moments to acknowledge the presence of deity. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. For me, that changed it from a ritual back into a prayer. And you guys did pretty good on the slowly thing, but we're going to work harder on that a little bit later. I want to thank Neil for allowing me to do this. I asked his permission to do this workshop, and I am thrilled to be here. I want to thank Jeremy for being a fabulous host. I need to tell you that I have a central nervous system disorder known as essential tremors. My hands shake, and I have an involuntary negative head shake. Every once in a while, my head will go like this, and I won't even know what's happening. So it's going to look like I disagree with what I'm saying. I don't. Now, I may later because I'm still learning, okay? The Alano say, trust the actions, not the words. We're going to suspend that for the afternoon. So don't trust my head shakes. And we're going to do what I like to call a page 112 meeting. This was come up with by one of the fellows I had the privilege of sponsoring. And I had the privilege of leading 4 or 5 men's retreats every year. I was open with this. If you brought your book to class, page 112, page 112, whoever gets there first, read me the first 3 words at the top of the page. Read this book. That's what we're going to do. My home group is the page 112 group in Old Hickory, Tennessee, which is the suburb of Nashville. And that's what we do. We read this book. And at our retreats, the way we open is we invite God, we slowly whisper the Serenity Prayer, and then we take turns. You pop up, give us your hometown, your name, your disease, and a page number. Give us a moment to get to it, and read us a paragraph or less from one place and tell us why you read it. You got 3 minutes, including the reading. And that's not what we're doing today. Today I'm going to do the whole thing myself. But I want you to know that's what we do with this thing, and it is a great way to start a retreat. I'm going to start on page Roman numeral 22, XXII. If you will go to page 1 in the big book, and go to the doctor's opinion, first page of the doctor's opinion, flip 1 page toward the front of the book, you'll find forward to the 3rd edition. And I think it contains, for me, the single most important phrase in the entire book. 3rd paragraph begins, the basic principles of the AA program, it appears, hold good to individuals' measurement lifestyles, just as the program has brought recovery to those of many different nationalities. So here it comes. The 12 steps that summarize the program. That's important information. We hear the word program all the time. The 12 steps that we see on the wall are a summary. That's the Cliff Notes. According to my sponsor, if that was the whole program, we'd have a pamphlet instead of a book. So that's the Cliff Notes. And he said I was so sick I needed the entire program. And we'll talk about that tonight. The last paragraph at the bottom of the page refers to the fellowship of AA. If you say you're an alcoholic and you're in AA, you're in. That's it for entrance requirements. There's a second fellowship mentioned. It's on page 164. And it has rather different entrance requirements from the fellowship of AA. 164 near the bottom of the page. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. The fellowship of the Spirit has different entrance requirements from the fellowship of AA. In my 40 years, I've seen a number of members of the fellowship of AA go back out. I have never seen a member of the fellowship of the Spirit go back out. These things look to me like the steps in narrative form, that entrance requirement there. I've seen two people that I know for absolutely certain did what's in this book go back out, and only two. I sponsored them both. I know they did the work. One of them married his new higher power, and she did not like how much time he spent with us, so he cut it way back, and you know how well that works. And he's back now. I just saw him get his 15-year chip. The other one is a hotel manager. He started running a dude ranch in Arizona, 40 miles from the nearest meeting, and quit going. And 2 years later, he drank for 2 weeks. Today, he's sober over 20 years. So only two people I know for sure did what's in here that drank again. And what I say is they allowed their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit to lapse. And when that membership lapsed, they relapsed. When they re-upped their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit, they got healthy again. And that's what happens here. And for me, it's completely magic. Page 456. I was in one of the gated communities. That's a state prison, for those of you who are not keeping up. And they have got books in there. And I'm telling you, you want to learn something about the book? Go do one of these meetings in the state prison where they've got their own book. They will dig nuggets out of these stories all day long. I watched them do it. But this is a couple of them that really lit me up. 5 lines from the bottom. 456. AA has accomplished so many things in my life today. They give me my sanity and all-around sense of balance. Now willing to listen and take suggestions, I found the process of discovering who I really am begins with knowing who I really don't want to be. It's what the first 5 steps are about. It's about finding out who I really don't want to be. For those of you who are new, but for everybody, bring to mind the 2 worst things you ever did. 2 very worst things you ever did. The fact that you think of them as worst things means that's not who you are. That's who you're not. Because that's what my disease had me doing, was doing who I'm not. What I was told here was that if I would follow the directions, they would teach me how to stop doing who I'm not, how to repair the damage from doing who I'm not, and who I really am will emerge from the ashes like the phoenix. And that's not poetry, that's what we do here. This, to me, recovery is about evolving into who I've always really been. And I've never really been the guy that did those things. That wasn't the real me. And that's so important for me. Page 66. It says near the bottom of the page, we turn back to the list where it held the key to the future. Does that mean if I don't find the key, I don't have a future? Yep, that's what that means. They threatened my life on this page 7 times. 7 times. I'm going to start in the middle of the first full paragraph. This business of resentment is infinitely grave. Infinitely grave. I think that might be serious. We found that it is fatal. We've just threatened your life, with your resentments. That's twice. For when harboring such feelings, not when having them. I'm okay if I have resentments if I'm not harboring them. Harbor means to give a safe place to nurture. We shut ourselves from the sunlight of spirit. Sadly, alcohol returns. We drink again. With us to drink is to die. Yeah. If we were to live. So this portion is only for the ones that want to live. Everybody else can take a short break. If we were to live, it had to be for Wenger, the grouch and the brainstorm, but not for us. I did not understand this sentence. And I did a little digging, and what I discovered was in the 1940s, an ad executive in New York City named Osborne wrote a book. And in it, he described a process that his team used to create an ad campaign. They put a product out. Somebody said, well, maybe this and maybe that and maybe the other, and somebody come up with what they did. Osborne labeled his process brainstorming. Has absolutely nothing to do with a brainstorm on this page. They are in no way related. I get a 1930s dictionary. I look up brainstorm. It says transient, violent mental outburst. That's rage. So there are two kinds of anger, the grouch or the slow burn or the brainstorm, rage. I completely misunderstood that sentence because I thought it had to do with the creative process, and it does not. I have to go back to when this book was written for some of the language to make sense to me. It said, they may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. I wonder what poison does. Turn back to the list for hell of a key to the future. Prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. Well, if you follow direction here on step 4 to this point, you've got a list of everybody you've ever been angry with. You've got a short subject on what they did. You've seen how it affected you. So if you'll imagine a courtroom, we've been sitting at the prosecution table. We got column 1, the accused. Column 2, the crime. Column 3, how the crime affected our innocent victim. If I'm going to look at it from an entirely is more than half, an entirely different angle, I'm going to have to walk across the courtroom and sit at the defense table and say, wait a minute. If I'd had his life, if my spouse had, if my parents had, if my classmates had, if my boss had, if, could I, on my worst spiritual hair day, have done what they did? I can't speak for you. I'll tell you, for me, there is no bottom. There is not a lower limit to what I'm capable of when I'm in my disease. There is no bottom. It's the beginning of the forgiveness process, which I think is the most important thing that we do. It says, began to see that the world and people really dominate us in that state. The wrongdoers, others, financial, real, had the power to actually kill. Guess who died? So they just killed me 7 times on this page with a single weapon, my resentments. The forgiveness process is not about letting somebody else off the hook. It's about letting me off. They're not on the hook. They can't feel that stuff. It's about letting myself off the hook. A couple of more sentences that I completely misunderstood. 77. I was told to read the black part, and then it got really, really tough. They said read all of the black part, which I thought was kind of excessive. Top of 77. Our real purpose to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and people about us. So clearly, it's not my purpose to be a maximum service to God and people about me. I have no idea how to do that. I wouldn't know which way to turn out of the driveway. But to fit myself to be a maximum service, you've taught me how to do that. Page 85, something very similar, where I just didn't read the whole thing. This is in the reading on step 10. It's easy to let up in the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. If it's easy to let up, it must require effort to not let up. Rest on our laurels. The laurels is a reference to either ancient Greece or ancient Rome, and I don't know which one, somebody may. When the athlete won the 100 meters of the discus or whatever, laurel was a vine. They weave it into a wreath, and he would wear it on his head like an athlete today might wear a medal. So if you're resting on your laurels, guess where your head is? That was a good guess. Somebody got, okay. So, right. So we're having trouble if we do. Alcohol's a cellophane. We're not cured. Really have a daily reprieve. I look up reprieve. It's a stay of execution or a delay of punishment. Daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So my reprieve is clearly not contingent on my spiritual condition. I have no idea what my spiritual condition is, and I'm not qualified to judge it. It's like spiritual growth. It's not something I do. It's something I receive. It contingent on the maintenance of it. And I'm a real good judge of that, and I better be. That's what the evening half of step 11 is about. It's about me finding out what kind of maintenance did I do on my spiritual condition today. Literally. I think maintenance means 2 things. It means to maintain in the sense of not losing something I've already got. It also means I made maintenance in the same sense that I maintenance my vehicle. I rotate the tires. I've got the right pressure in them. I change the oil on time. I wash it. I maintenance my spiritual condition. Daily prayer and meditation. Reading spiritual literature, attending meetings, sponsoring, being sponsored, letting people in traffic, trying to spread love and joy. I do the things you have taught me to maintenance my spiritual condition. and then I don't need to worry about what it is. It is, and so it's the same answers on 77. How do I fit myself? The same answer. Daily prayer and meditation, reading scripture, that whole thing that you've taught me. And what that does is it opens me up to receive the gift of recovery. It's not something I can go get. It's something I have to open myself up to receive. I'm going to chase a concept through the book. 568. It says about 10 lines from the bottom, he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. I'll look up the etymology of belligerent. Comes from the Latin word bellico, which means war. That is fists up, ready to go to the parking lot, denial. That's what I've got to get away from. But it says, there's a principle which is a bar against all information, proof against all arguments, which cannot fail to keep a man everlasting ignorance. Principle is contempt prior to investigation. Contempt prior to investigation. We're going to find that concept on page 143. If your man accepts your offer, we point out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. They're providing him with the best possible medical attention. He understands he must undergo a change of heart, so this must change. And then it says to get over drinking will require. I've always wondered if that was important. Require a transformation. That's a total change of thought and attitude. It says the same thing on page 58 in the most often read, least listened to portion of our literature. 4 lines from the bottom, 58. Some of it had tried to hold on to our old ideas. The result was nil till we let go absolutely. Same concept on page 51. In the dead center of the page, I had to look up the word fetter, F-E-T-T-E-R. I was not familiar with it. It means to restrict. On a trail ride, instead of tying horses up to trees at night, they fetter them. They tie short lengths of rope between their legs. The horse can walk, but he can't run. They've fettered him. They've restricted his ability to move. Dead center of the page, 51. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Page 42. About 8 or 10 lines from the bottom. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. One is one, two is a couple, several is more than two. Things I believed all my life are going to have to go. Page 27. Carl Jung, arguably the greatest psychologist of all time, is telling a guy named Roland Hazard that he hadn't got a snowball's chance unless one thing can happen. Dead center, 27. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. A completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Powerful stuff. Stuff I believed all my life. Going to have to go. I've been the actor all my life. I became convinced as a small boy I wasn't good enough. Nothing I ever did could measure up. And I got to be something, and being Scott can't work. So I'm going to be the second coming of John Wayne. Except for the fighting, I'm too pretty. I can't risk this, but I'm too pretty. But other than that, I'm going to be the second coming of John Wayne. So I take on this persona, see if it sounds familiar. Big boys don't cry. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Never let them see your weakness. Never ask a stupid question. Get what you want. It'll make you happy. Never surrender. Never give up, no matter what. Never apologize. It's a sign of weakness. How to do. Yeah. That hits most of us right on the head. That's the act most of us come here doing based on this core belief that I'm not good enough. I got to be something else. Turns out all of that's crap. All of that's exactly wrong. Real men are in touch with their emotions. I teach crying. I had to be taught. I came to you. I could not cry. I hadn't cried in over 20 years when I came to you. And I'm watching a guy in my home group, a rather famous guy. We got a lot of those in Nashville. He's crying in a lot of meetings. I finally said, tell me about the tears. He said, somebody says something beautiful and it touches my heart and I weep. It feels so good. And I said, I can't cry. He said, I will teach you. And he did. Now, I can't cry on command, but if something moves me, believe me, if I get moved here, you will see the tears. This will not be the largest group I've cried in front of. And it doesn't bother me at all. If you disrespect a man that cries, I'm sad for you. I really am. And if anybody needs to learn to cry, see me later. I'll give you my email address. I wrote it up. I'll be glad to send it to you. I need to warn you, gentlemen. If you start crying at appropriate times and places, you're going to attract a lot of women. So don't call me and complain about that. I told you at the gate, okay? I told you right up front. Because the ladies are sick of that John Wayne act you're doing. They see right through it. Right, girls? Yes. They're not buying that crap, fellas. I'm telling you. It lights them up like Chinese New Year's. Anyway, now we're going to talk about something else, okay? Page 1. I think laughter is a sound effect of recovery. So when you get to page 1, turn 2 more pages toward the front of the book. Just trust me and just flip 2 toward the front. The right-hand page will be XXIX. About 6 or 8 lines down. This is repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's a very little hope of his recovery. Entire psychic change. We have just looked at 6 pages that said the same thing. And in Tennessee English, what they say is, some of what I know for sure ain't so. When I came to you, one of my problems was what I didn't know. My biggest problem was the things I knew for certain were actually incorrect. And I think my recovery began as I was able to release my grip on the things I thought I knew for sure. It was so important for me to continue to do that. One of the fellows I sponsors got, I think, about 5 years, and he said, I know what you talk about when you're around guys like me. What do you talk around when you're around other guys with 20, 30, 40 years? What do you talk about? I said, we talk about 2 things. How can we best carry this message to the next newcomer? And how can we have newcomer ears? How can I stay green and growing? It's such a critically important piece for me. I got page 6 written down here, and I don't know why. Well, it'll be okay. Page 13 has got a couple of very powerful things on it for me. About 11 lines down, page 13. But for those, they just added this. You may know that they sneak into your bedroom at night and add stuff to your book. Those of you who read the book often are aware of what I'm talking about. These things were added just last year. The last word on the line is friend, capital F. And it's a reference to God as a friend. That's not what I was told. That's not what I was told before I came to you. And the fact is, if I'm afraid of God, if I have a God I fear, I can't do step 3. Can't be done. Got to have a metamorphosis there. Last paragraph. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. New relationship with my Creator. That implies I had one when I got here. I would have told you I didn't, and yet I did. See if you recognize any of these pre-AA prayers, okay? God, please help me pass this test I didn't study for. Please don't let those flashing red and blue lights be for me. Another very popular pre-AA prayer. Please don't let her be pregnant. I'm told I can be prayed in the first person. And what I look at, and I've got one more, I'm going to do that tonight when I tell my story. What I look at and see now is in those days when I prayed, I was trying to make him my God. Today, you've taught me how to make me his man. The difference is this one works, but it had to begin with that friend idea. I had to have a friendly God or none of that could happen. None of it could happen. Page 16. 1-6. Yeah, I'm sorry. Second paragraph. There's, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. We're going to chase the concept through the book again. We just chased the concept of some of what I know for sure ain't so. Now we're going to chase fun through the book. We just found it on 16. 132. Forgive the Hollywood. The dead center of 132. That'd be 17 lines from the top and bottom and 2 words in from both margins. where I think it may say, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. Our steps are only suggested, but we insist on enjoying life. The fact is, if I don't make this life better, I'll go back. I am committed to making this life better. I insist on enjoying life. Bottom of the page, we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Cheerfulness, wow. Top of 133, second line, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. 151, I've always loved that number. You know, you don't have to wait for that 151 rum. It'll take you downtown right now. You do not have to wait for that. So now and then a serious drinker being dried to home says, I don't miss it all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. Think I'll join the gym. I ad-libbed that part about the gym. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a salad. We know his friends like a boy whistling in the dark, keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks to get away with them. I'm going to talk about that. I don't have the slightest interest in being a social drinker. I don't know why they do it. It makes no sense to me. I have no interest in having a drink with the boys on the way home from work or a beer while I watch the ball game or mow the grass. Makes no sense. I do a life coach on the side. I worked with a doctor several years ago and got his book published. And to thank me, he took me to a three-forker. Okay, a three-forker is a restaurant with a white tablecloth. I get 3 forks. Well, I don't dine, I eat. But anyway, I'm on best behavior. And the server addresses himself, and I order a Diet Coke, and the doctor orders a Bacardi Coke, and I don't say to him, you're obviously an amateur drinker. A professional would never pour a Call brand into a soft drink. You can't taste the difference. You're going to need that extra few dollars later in this drunk. But I don't even mention it, right? And an hour later, when they bring us the check, the doctor already drank a third of his first drink. He's already had a third of it in an hour. And I know where the drink is, too, by the way. And the ice has melted, and it's now this ugly brown rainbow. And I say to him, aren't you going to finish your drink? I didn't say it that way. Aren't you going to finish it? No, I had all I wanted. Really? How would you? I don't want to be able to do that. I don't know what a Call brand costs at a three-forker. I know it's serious money. Right? I don't want to be able to do that. It says here, inwardly give anything to take a half a dozen drinks and get away with them. A half a dozen, the way I pour, no consequences, we could talk. We could talk. But I don't need to fool myself. I don't want to be a social drinker. I don't know why they drink. I think they should do something else. Anyway, it troubles me. And this next sentence, if you're new, may be the most important one in this book. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. Wait a minute. Does that mean if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to have to find a way to be sober and happy at the same time? That is precisely what that means. That's exactly what this whole thing is about. That's what we're here to do. That is exactly what we're here to do. Page 8. Oh, I tell you what, we almost got to 8. We're going to 61 first. It was close. You went for the fake, didn't you? Yeah. 2/3 of the way down the page, you're going to see, is he not, 2 lines in a row. The second one says that he's not a victim of the delusion. They can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well. Let me translate that into Tennessee English for you. What that says is that I'm so nuts that I think occasionally if I can get what I want, it will make me happy. I am not a keen observer. I have failed to notice the tens of thousands of times I got what I wanted was not rendered happy. Okay? Back to audience participation. Who, when you were a child, wanted a bike? You sure if you get a bike, you'd be happy and you get a bike? Anybody? Great, thank you. Are you happy? Okay, let's try again. Who wanted him or her? Sure if you get him or her, you'd be happy. Let's see it. Okay, now you could be sitting next to him. I ain't going to ask the other question. I'm not trying to get you in any trouble. Who was sure if you could get rid of him or her? You'd be, yes, Lord, yeah. So I got to look at the truth. And the truth is getting what I want isn't going to make me happy. Page 8. 8. Yeah. Just past halfway down the page. I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. Einstein said the four dimensions were width, depth, height, and time, with time being the fourth dimension. And the time I get catapulted into is a time the alcoholic rarely visits. It's right here, right now. Between the claps, right here, right now. My mind is off in the past, reliving victories, some of which may have actually happened. Right. Or I'm off in the future figuring it all out, plan B and plan C, and what if the other? What if they find out this? And what lie am I going to have to tell to cover the lie I've already told? And I'm rarely right here, right now. My mind could learn a lot from my feet. My feet stay right here, right now. They never go into the past. They never go into the future. And they are very well coiffed today, don't you think? Think they go? It goes okay, right? My girlfriend approved this. I should tell you, I'm 81 years old. I have a young girlfriend. She's 77. And if recovery isn't fun, I can't keep doing it. I can't keep doing it. This is so critically important for us to have a good time. There's going to be some downtime. There are going to be some tough spots. But by and large, this is the fun I was always looking for. Continuing at the bottom of page 8, Bill describes the fourth dimension in his own terms. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes. Happiness, I get that. Aristotle said what everyone wants is to be happy. And I want that for myself. Absolutely, I want to be happy. Peace, yes, peace. I want to be peaceful. I want to be calm and comfortable in here all the time, and I want that for myself also. What is usefulness doing on the list? That's for them. No, it isn't. It's for me. There is no direct route into happiness and peace. It is a side effect of being useful. It's where the magic is. We have chased a couple of concepts through the book. We may do another one. I can give you 5 or 6 page numbers that say I create my own trouble. We'll probably do that here in a couple of minutes. We just looked at some of what I know for sure ain't right. The single theme that runs wider and deeper in this book than any other is help others be of service, which is the same thing. I read the book one time from Roman numeral 11, the end of the table of contents, to 164, the end of the basic text. And I counted 52 places that said to help be of service, help others. I found more since then. It just doesn't seem to matter what's going on in my life. The answer is for me to help you. It makes no sense at all. It works every time. It's where the magic is. It's where the absolute magic is. Page 84. So I was diagnosed with cancer in my throat in June of 20. They took my teeth, as I'm sure you've noticed. Because they did so much radiation to my face, they killed my jawbone. It's still here, but it's dead. They had to take my teeth first. And my throat is all scar tissue now. It wakes me up about every hour and a half to 2 hours all night, and I have to sip water because the scar tissue dries and sticks together. My epiglottis is buried in scar tissue and is not trustworthy. I'm on a liquid diet for the rest of my life. It's not a big deal. I came to you on a liquid diet. It's just a different liquid. Not that big a deal. Not that big a deal. But when I was diagnosed with the cancer, I told the guys I sponsor, your first thought is wrong again as usual. You're thinking Scott's got this life-threatening disease and he does not need my small problem. But you got it exactly wrong again. I need to get out of me, and there's no route out of me. But if I can get into you as a side effect, I'll be out of me. I need your hangnails, and I need them badly. I need to sponsor you right now. My life depends on me sponsoring you when I'm having a hard time. I don't believe it's possible to give without receiving. And it's not possible to receive without giving. I believe it's spiritual law. If you're new, you're a nice person. I know you are, because that's what God makes. How would you like to do somebody else a massive favor, a huge life-changing favor? How would you like to do that? Let me tell you how. Allow them to sponsor you. Take them your hangnails. Tell them the truth. I'll tell you how to know you got a sponsor. When you can call your sponsor today and ask the question you asked yesterday, and you know you got a good answer yesterday, you just can't remember what it was, when you can make that call, you've got a sponsor. If you can't make that call, you're still managing what they think about you. Quit that. Quit it. There's no reason. They knew you were a squirrel the day before you got here. We all are. That's that's who we are. But allow someone to sponsor you, because it may be that lesson isn't for you. Maybe the reason you can't remember is because the sponsor needs to say it so they can hear it again. Do them the honor of asking that question again the next day. I love that. I love it when a sponsee tells me he lied to me. God, I love that. I just love it. Page 23. We're going to come back to 84 if I remember, but I'm having too much fun. They describe me in a single sentence in the center of the page. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. Once in a while, maybe. That's pretty thin. Right. My good friend Tim says rigorous honesty is like scotch. It's an acquired taste. Right? I knew this sponsee was going to lie to me the day before I met him. That's what they do. And I'm always excited. He calls me on Sunday night. He says, I know I called you earlier today, and I told you I went to 7 meetings last week. I only went to 6. And I say, wow, I celebrate your recovery. Look how far you've come. You've got a long history of lying for credit when you could have got cash for the truth. And here you are with something as small as 1 meeting differential, and you can't live with it. Look how far you've grown. 1, it's the truth. 2, never again will you think, well, I know what Scott's going to say, so I have no reason to call him, because he did not know I was going to say that. I think the 3 most important things a sponsor can say are, I love you. I'm told that God is love. When I give love, I give God. It is the highest gift. 2, I'm proud of you. I'm on a constant search for ways to say I'm proud of you. Constant search. And 3rd, and maybe most important, is I don't know. I don't know. It's okay not to know. I will find out. Recovery's a team sport. First word, first step, we. Recovery's a team sport, and I'm on a fabulous team. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. But I'll know by dark, because I got some people I can go find. Page 159. We're going to come back to 84. We really are, maybe. 159. People who are about to sponsor, they're afraid they're going to kill somebody. Here's Scott's 2 rules of sponsorship. Rule 1, if they're ready, you can't do it wrong. If they're not ready, you can't do it right. It's not up to you. And rule 2 is, don't take credit for the ones that make it. Because if you do, you get the blame for the ones that don't. And some of them are going to prison, some are going to die. They're going to reference here on page 159 3 individuals. They're Dr. Bob, Bill Dotson, who I'm sure most of you know is AA number 3, and Ernie Galbraith, who was AA number 4. Last paragraph, first sentence. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Those 3 men, with the hand of God on them, the newly sober guys in AA, with access to a hospital full of drunks, only succeeded with 7 in a year and a half. How many missed? How many missed? If they're ready, you can't do it wrong. If they're not ready, you can't do it right. It's not up to you. Be at peace. When I sign on to sponsor you, I don't sign on to know. I sign on to find out and to tell you the truth with a lot of love. With a lot of love. We are going to go to 84. I've only got 2 brain cells left. One of them's on the respirator, the other one kind of flickers. And if it doesn't go off again before we get to 84, I'm going to read one of the 9-step promises. The third line, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Uselessness and self-pity. What are they doing together? What I discovered was, as I went through chemo and radiation, which is rough as a stucco toilet seat, by the way, for those of you who have not been through it, it's a tough assignment. I got into depression a couple of times. It lasted about 20 minutes both times, and I realized I was in it. And I followed a prescription in the book. I picked up the phone and called you. Said, how are you? What's going on in your life? How can I make it better? And it lifted us both. My my hometown of Nashville they're moving. We're having over 30,000 people a year moving to my town for the last decade. We got traffic jams now like we never had before. And I used to sit in the traffic and just fume. I don't do that anymore. What I do is I reach in. The reason I wear the vest is very stylish, but I really, because I need the pockets. You get old, you're going to need pockets. And yeah, and if you don't do the steps, don't worry about it, you ain't going to get old. But if you do them, but anyway, so I reach into my pocket and I pull out a clown nose. And I reach a little deeper and I pull out a little jar of bubbles about the size of my traffic finger. And I don't know what you call it. Anyway, and I start blowing bubbles out the window, which gets the other driver's attention. They look at the clown nose and start laughing. Laughter's contagious. I start laughing. We're still stuck in traffic. I've turned it into a party. If we stay stuck, if it's like a wreck and we're going to be there a while, I shut it down, start passing them. I'm carrying about 100 of both of those in the back of my car right now. I'm ready. Or if I'm walking through an airport, it was unusual yesterday when I traveled that I didn't get to do this, through an airport and a grocery store. There's a young mom there. She's got 2 kids, and they're good kids. I know they are. They're just having a hard day. I get about 8 or 10 feet away from them, and I nose up, and I blow bubbles, and the screaming stops right now. And children will lock onto bubbles like a good bird dog coming on point. And I go up to the mom and say, I'm a stranger. I don't want to give your children anything, but can the kids have the clown noses and bubbles? I give them to her. I've only been turned down once this year. This past year. The year before, every time they took them. Every time. What happens when you do that? What happens? The kid's day was lifted. Who else? Mom. Who else? Everyone who saw it. Who else? Me. If I'm sloshing love and joy on you, it splatters onto me every time. Part of my morning prayer every morning is that I don't miss any opportunities to be of service to spread love and joy. It's unusual for me to fly and be as much time in the airport as I did and not be able to find some unhappy kids and be able to do this. It is such a great joy for me. Page 15. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm. The idea of helping other alcoholics to the solution of their problems, it was fortunate. My business associate remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. If you're new, let me make a suggestion. Don't be upset with your family if they can't get excited about your 90-day trip. If you're like me, they have every right to be cynical about that. The best thing you can say is you have every right to doubt this, but hang with me. We'll see what happens. Don't sell it to them. They won't buy it. Let us celebrate. We understand. It may take them some time. I personally think the longer it takes them to buy into your recovery, probably the healthier they are. Anyway, it says, I was not too well at the time. I was plagued. Listen to the power in the words, plagued. When's the last time you heard the word plague used as a verb? Plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment, 2 great killers of people like me. And when I'm in AA, I identify as an alcoholic. I'm actually what they call tri-addicted. I'm addicted to everything I tried. Yeah, I thought you would. Continuing on 15. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. There it is. There's that prescription again. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. I look up the word despair. It means without hope. You had to go down through depression to get to despair. It lays under depression. Talking to a man there, I'd be amazing to lift up and set on my feet. It's a design for living. It works in the rough going. Speaking of rough going, we talk a lot about promises. Here's a beauty for you at the bottom of page 14, last line. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. We promise you trials and low spots. That's the bad news. The good news is you're not going to have to go through them alone. You can pretend to care. You can't pretend to show up. You're sitting in a room full of people that will show up. They will be there. Believe me, they will be there. You will not go through it alone. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And they just threatened your life. It will literally kill you. Page 46 has, for me, two of the most powerful concepts in the entire book. The last paragraph begins with the word much. If you count up 3 lines above that, toward the middle of the page, it says, it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So get out of the business of trying to understand God. You can't. My sponsor says, the teacup of my mind cannot contain the ocean of God. And I think that's laid out pretty well. So when we say God as you understand, we're not saying you're going to understand God. We're saying you don't have to believe what anybody else ever told you, and we don't care how qualified they claim to be. We don't care. You and God can work that out together if you will be open to it. 5 lines from the bottom. One of the 2 best pieces of news I've ever gotten in my entire life. We found that God might not make too hard terms of those who seek him. Let me translate that into Tennessee English. God ain't mad at us. Whew. Man, that's some good news. That's not what I've been told. That is not what I've been told. Page 62. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Rarely have we seen a person fail to start to follow their path. I'm supposed to be on the path. Things with roots don't travel. So this root thing is probably going to have to go. Driven by 100 forms of fear. Driven! Not mildly bothered on rare occasion. Driven by 100 forms of fear. Fear is the deep concern I may not get my will at some time in the future. Self-delusion, I believe my own BS. I've only got 2 brain cells left. One of them creates BS, the other one buys it. Self-seeking, I'm full throttle after my will. Self-pity, poor me, I did get my will at some time in the past. Poor me, I'm not getting my will right now. You hear the underlying current there, the my will thing. At this point, my sponsor said, how'd you like some good news? I said, well, I would like some good news. He said, how would you like the best news you're ever going to get in your entire life? I said, I'm open, babe. Hit me with it. He said, so our troubles we think are basically our own making. Was that it? That was it. I don't get it. He said, if it really is the cops, the courts, the judges, the Russians, the Chinese, your future ex-wife and her mother and their lawyer, if they really are the problem, you lose. The good news is that you, sir, are the problem. If you'll bring some willingness to this party, we can work on that. Willingness, bottom, and surrender all have the exact same definition. It's when someone who's qualified asks me to do something I don't like, that I don't think will help, that I don't want to do, that I don't think matters, I do it anyway. Is that do it anyway that defines bottom, willingness, and surrender. That's where the magic is the realization that my way didn't work. It did not seem like it at the time. He said, if those people have to move 1/4 of an inch, you're cooked. The moment you become the problem, there's hope. If you bring that willingness piece, if you bring that do it anyway piece here, do some things that don't make any sense to you. If you're new, you probably see what I saw on the steps, that 4, 5, and 9 are designed to punish you. You probably see that. That's what I saw. We don't have time to dawn to cover the things I was actually wrong about. I was wrong about that, and you probably are too. Those 3 steps that I was so terrified of were where I got most of my growth. I was just wrong. So we're talking about some of the things I knew for sure were actually incorrect. Page 53. I'm sorry, we're talking about how I create my own trouble. Second paragraph, when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis. Self-imposed crisis. Page 64. Paragraph begins in the middle of the page. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. I was terrified of step 4, and I've become a step 4 junkie. It's my great passion. If I couldn't do this step workshop, I'd want to do one on step 4, but it takes me 2 hours to cover it. Straight out of the book. It's just a little piece at a time. But I would like to share with you, I think, the single most important thing I can tell you about step 4. When We are not saving. You have my permission to do a lousy 4-step. Just get in there and do a poor one. Get in there and do the worst 4-step in history. Because if you have to do it perfectly, you can't pick up the pen. We are not saving a special alcove in Akron at the AA Hall of Fame for your 4-step. And my home group does not give a trophy every year for the best 4-step, and this is the trophy you are not going to get. If you're too far back to read it, it says 4-step trophy never awarded. This is a trophy you ain't getting. So get in there and do a lousy one, and don't think of it as your 4-step. It's your first 4-step. If you're serious about this and really get into this thing, in less than a year, you'll be taking your first newcomer through this work. And when they get to 4, you'll go with them. So we'll just get what we could get this first time. And I'll be happy to have you have your picture made with the 4-step trophy a little bit later. I'm serious about it. I've had the privilege of doing this in Russia twice and Ukraine 3 times. And those people went crazy over the 4-step trophy, and they can't read it. I take 2 pictures. I take one with me covering up, never awarded. It looks like you were receiving a trophy. We're excited. And then we take one where we show that and we look very sad. Yeah. And Jeremy, if you would bring a chair and come up here. Page 35. We're going to play just a little bit here. See if we can figure out a way to get 2 of us on this microphone. Page 35 asks one of the most important questions in the whole book. At the very top. It says, what sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? It goes on to talk about Jim. He used to own this automobile agency. He lost it through drinking. About 8 lines from the bottom, it says, all went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. That's important stuff, okay? But we're going to turn the page, and it says, yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. Please note the difference. What we asked was exactly what happened. What we got was his story. Are you with me? Jack Nicholson has a line in the movie, As Good as It Gets. He says, I'll always give you some version of the truth. Tell me that wasn't written by one of our people. I know it was. So I was a combat pilot in Vietnam. And we used to do what we call an after-action report. What we've got here is an after-action report from Jim. We're going to change that to a phone call that Jim might have made to his sponsor. Jeremy's going to play Jim, and I'm going to be the sponsor who would respond to this insanity. So go ahead and start there. I came
to work on a Tuesday morning.
What happened to Monday? A lot of guys work on Monday. What do you cut hair for a living? You get Mondays off? I'm fascinated by your story. Please continue.
I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned.
Irritated? How about bent? How about your blood pressure shoots up 40 points? Your face begins to turn red. You get this migraine headache. Your veins in your throat stand out, begin to throb. When you think about working for this jerk that you used to own this place, that's called minimizing. You can die from that. It's one of your specialties. I'm glad you called. Please continue. Please continue with your story.
I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious.
Oh, you had a fight with your boss and you don't think it was serious? I have a news flash from you, Sparky. Fights with bosses are always serious. There's no such animal. I'm so glad you called. Please continue with your story.
Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car.
Well, that's where they all are. Boy, aren't they lucky to have a genius like you working at that place that knows that all the prospects are out in the country? Wow, it amazes me they spend the money to keep all those cars in that showroom. What does that cost them? Boy, they're lucky to have a genius like you. Please continue with your story.
On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar.
Well, of course you did. I bet there's not a McDonald's within 3,000 miles of there. Here you are, newly sober. Why wouldn't you go to a place that of course you went to a place that has a bar. Oh, I'm so glad you called. Continue with your story.
I had no intention of drinking.
Of course not.
I just thought.
You thought? I don't remember telling you to think. We have seen the results of your thinking. All right, go ahead. You thought what?
I'd get a sandwich.
Yeah, oh, that's what you thought.
I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place.
Yeah, that's where they all are, out in the country and in the bar. I bet there's 100 car salesmen in the parking lot waiting for you to leave so they can come prospect in that bar. Wow. Boy, they're lucky to have you. Please continue with your story.
Which was a familiar, for I had been going there for years.
Wait a minute, what happened to that don't go to old playmates and playground thing? You remember that little thing we talked about? Yeah. This sounds a little bit like an old playground. I'm so glad you called. Please continue.
I had been going to it for a few years. I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober.
Oh, good thinking. I love your thinking. Go ahead.
I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking.
Of course not.
I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk.
Great, let's overdose on food if we can't have booze. A definition of an alcoholic is somebody who could use up a 1-year supply of anything in less than 3 weeks. Go ahead.
Suddenly, the thought
A
crossed
thought?
my-
Oh,
Yeah,
no, not a thought. No!
that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach.
Of course not. Of course not. We have a name for that kind of thing. It's called alkalogic. And you are waist deep in it. Skip to the next paragraph.
Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim.
Yeah, there it goes. So that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, good job. I'm so glad you called, Jim. That could have been a bad one. Yeah, right back to the asylum. Now, I want to show you something. The reason, in the first place, I think that's fun. I believe in fun. The second place, I want you to scan the page and look how often the word I appears. Look at that. Look at that. He lost the first word in the first step, we. First step, we. He lost the we. The only we on the page is where we ask him to tell us what happened. We didn't even get that. We got his story. I just love it. You can do that on this next story also. So many more things I'd like to do. We're about out of time here. Page 458. Almost. 457. That was close. At that same gated community, they shared this one with me, and I think it's so powerful. At the very end, from experience, I've realized I cannot go back and make a brand new start, but through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end. That's what this whole thing is about. What this whole thing is about. And the simple fact is, I don't have the power to make a mistake so ugly that God can't turn it into magnificent. Not fix. That's who I am. That's who he is. We invited him, and I believe he came. And if you were touched and you borrowed my God, borrow him again. If you invited your God, you were touched. Use those moments of silence to do that to start the meetings. This has been the fastest hour I've had in a long time. I cannot believe how fast it went by. And I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank the God of my limited understanding for bringing us together so we could have this. And I'd like to have a few moments of silence, and each and one way thank him for coming. And then I want to lean on the slowly again. We're going to slowly whisper the Lord's Prayer. This whisper thing started, I was in one of the jails about 35 years ago. And we opened the Serenity Prayer and closed the Lord's Prayer. And the guys in the jail are all suffering from testosterone poisoning. And the prayer sounds more like an invitation to fight. God, grant me this serenity. I thought, man, I can't listen and do this to the Lord's Prayer, so I asked them to whisper it. And some of them were in tears, and some of you will be too. Let's thank God, and then we'll slowly whisper the Lord's Prayer. I would note that amen is the last word. I'd like to have a moment of silence after amen and feel the love in this room. I think you'll feel it. Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless us all. Thank you. Safe travel. We're going to take about a 3 hour and 58-minute break.